The first question I wanted to ask you is if you remember your teacher who taught you singing.
There are three answers. My first teacher is my teacher for canon. He never worked singing with, was only the instrument. So with him, I learned the model system. And as he was quite open-minded, and I was very much fond of theoretical things, yet his method suited well for me, and he was quite open, let's say, for other things. I worked with him for about 6 years, I think. I don't really remember. It seems to me as it was, all my life. And we were very good friends. And he used to come to our house, for he used to like to drink raki, and each time I went to his house for our lesson, his wife would have prepared the table, and we would spend the day together. And that was really traditional teaching, because I learned a lot of things while eating with him at the table, talking. He used to tell stories. So it was, apart from the purely musical work, it was also all the things surrounding it. And he used to make fun of me when I tried to sing something. You sing like a crow. And I didn't sing at all, because I have this story that I tell once in a while, that I used to go to the church when I was small and stay with them, with the deacons and the other singers at the church. And of course, as I've seen with other kids later, they used to move my lips. I don't even remember if I sang with them or not. We call this in Armenian to fill the ears. And then one day, that was in this church, that was the church where the first Gomidas choir was formed. And Gomidas, when he was in Istanbul, he formed his polyphonic choir in that church. So had a very well-known polyphonic choir, that church. And then one day the director changed. It was a young man, very strict looking and everything. And he called all the kids one by one, and he had a fork that I had never seen before in my life. I don't remember how old I was, but I was small, He then ding said, "Give me the sound." I said, I did something like this, and then he said, "Okay, now you'll have to listen for a while." That day, I stopped going to the church.
At all?
At all, yeah. Because I was okay with the others, with the singers, and they never said anything to me that I was singing false or something. We don't do that with the kids, who are learning. You help them, okay, but you don't discourage them. But this was serious business, the choir. So I stopped going, and then of course I didn't sing. And then my canon teacher, my master, used to make fun of me, of course. So for me, my real singing teacher is my wife. So she made me understand that it was just mostly a question of breathing and nothing else. Because, you have those cliches that your voice must be like this or like that, and all this is, empty things. In fact, if you breathe normally and you make a sound, and you can sing, that's it. So I spent the time a while for assuming this thing as reality, because I had a heavy past with singing. As she is very passionate, Of course, after working for a few years with her, I met this master singer in Paris, with whom I went back to the church because I recognized that he was one of those guys that I had met when I was small. I'm telling you about this in the film, I think. This was his hand movements that made me understood that he was one of them. He was born in 1898,
This is a very important issue, and it brings us to another question I think is very important, because you teach people who, unlike you, don't have any Eastern experience or Eastern background. How do you feel about that? Are there issues that don't take place when you teach, for example, people in Istanbul or people who have experienced modality and they have, as you said, created their ears, filled their ears before, yes?
I have a very much more limited possibilities to work with people from the Middle East than with people who come from completely different musical culture. Like, for example, the work I did with Teatr, I would never be able to do that with Istanbul people, because for them there is a model music and that's it. And they prefer to remain in that. They're not interested in, this is not a criticism, it's, let's say, normal, because they don't necessarily see a difference. That's the way it is. So with Westerners, who, especially those who have no musical background, it's much more interesting because they don't have preconceived ideas about it.
Do they always fall into the modal world?
Not necessarily, but they work on it. And that effort, the work, to being interested and getting into the process, is in itself a very interesting, very enriching thing. And you don't have a result. You don't necessarily have a result. Sometimes you have, and you get very happy, but the process is very interesting.
Because I remember how long it took us to understood that there is a difference.
Yeah.
It was really like really long process.
Not to sing it well, just to
No, no, no.
hear
just
that
to
there is a
understand,
difference.
not to sing.
Yeah.
About singing, it was
Yeah.
still.
Well, with you, the difference was that I never had a doubt that it wouldn't work. I don't know why. For me, the time was necessary, and that's it. And I remember the day when we were sitting at the window, and the moment you understood the Gloria mode. Remember? That was one of my happiest moments in my life. Because, hey, that's it. It's done. It can happen, yeah. It happens.
What about Armenians? When we speak about modality and non-modality, because I remember you were saying many times that Armenians, I think you were hinting on this, that Armenians don't really sing in the modal way anymore. Armenians not from the diaspora, but from Armenia.
Both.
Both.
Yeah, I mean, from Armenia and from the diaspora, they're in the same situation. Because modal singing with Armenians didn't have its normal process. It was really cut in a very wild way. So what happens after the First World War? Most of the Armenians are all of the Armenians, I mean, except a very little number of people, were either in the Western world or in Caucasus, which became very soon after the Soviet Union. And Soviet Union is West, musically speaking, is the Western world. So there's no difference. So it was cut and it was put in this context immediately. So there was no other way. And the modal singing became something that assimilated in mentalities to everything which is Turkish, So you don't get close to that because it's the enemy. It's the opposite attitude of the Greeks, for example. The Turks sing something, and it's very funny when you get together with Greeks and Turks singing in the same place. The Turk will sing something, and the Greek will say Byzantiniko. They don't care. Whatever they do, the Turks, it's Byzantiniko. That's it. They take it for themselves, and that's it. And the Turks took it from them. And the Armenians, oh no, this is whatever they have. No, this is Turkish. We want whatever is Western. Because the Orientalism, if the West gives up the Orientalism, the Orientalized is still Orientalized, it remains like that.
And personally, how do you find this music, which is the same, essentially, it's the same material that can be sung modally? I'm speaking still about Armenian chant.
Yeah.
It can be sung modally, or it can be, of course, it can be noted down in musical notes and sung by a choir. And if we were to describe by words, which is what we're doing now, the difference, of course we can all hear the difference, and we know that there are many flavors that are lost, but what would be your definition of this difference?
They sing monophonic, but in the equal temperament, and of course with a very clear, nice voice. It is very important that cliché is still very, very, very living cliché, that you have to have a beautiful voice. Everybody is, just that they melt in front of a beautiful voice. Although, all the birds sing. The crow sings also. You like it or not, but the crows have the right to sing. So this is one thing. If they do monophonic with this almost operatic voice, and they say it is traditional. And the others would use the same singing technique, and they will do it in the polyphonic choir and everything. But all of them have the mentality of singing a melody. Now you have words singing. When you're singing, you're telling a story, and you're telling a story with certain sounds, which altogether create an environment, sound environment. And in this environment, since there are several sounds, these sounds normally should be in relation with each other. So this is the musical mode. So if you don't consider this, you have like something like a meeting of soldiers, for example. They all have the uniform and they're all the same. You don't have the right to be different when you're a soldier in a uniform. So this is what's happening out of this context. Singing, nice melody, okay. So what?
But if there is a good ensemble that sings together modal music in a good way, they are still obliged to sing the same thing and in the same way, in the same mode, with the same
if
sound.
There are several together,
if there are several of them.
Well, it never used to happen. If 2 or 3 people sang together, they would sing together but differently. Because they're different people. It's the Western choral mentality which makes them sing all the same way. For the instruments, it was the same. For example, in the old days in the Turkish Ottoman music, they would use only one of the kind of these instruments. A singer and 3 or 4 music instruments, never 2 of the same. Because they're all soloists. They're all different. So they would put one of each, and you would hear them. And then, of course, there was this the tradition started. I think it started in the Arab world with Kulthum and everything. To put 15 violins and everything, and doing Arabic music. So it came to the East too. But of course, this doesn't mean that you cannot sing very well a traditional melody in a polyphonic choir. It can be very nice, of course. But it's another world. When I'm saying soldiers, it's not a pejorative, how do you say in English, pejorative, negative thing that I'm saying about, doesn't exclude a good execution with a polyphonic choir, Just the approach of modal music and non-modal music in this context, for example, for the Armenian singing, let's say. Like, I don't know, a peasant song. The peasant is telling a story. Now you put it in the choir and you get something completely different. You make art with it, but you still don't know what the peasant is saying.
Yeah. It's just not a coincidence that there is the English word, at least. I don't know how it is in French, Armenian, or Turkish. I know that in Polish it doesn't function so well, but the English word modal music, it's not a coincidence that the word mode is used. Yes, because there are many ways, many modes of telling a story. So the peasant, the singer, the musician chooses one mode, one way, and applies it. I'm imagining that it's the same in all the languages you speak.
Mm-hmm. Oh, and the same mode will sound differently with different people.